One of the cool things about this podcast is I get to have people on that I already always talk to, but I get to have like a more formal conversation. Rob Donaker, matchmaker for Shamrock FC, man that wears many hats, father as well.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you for being on Easy Talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, I think I remember me and you talking when you were like, oh man, I think I'm going to start podcasting. And literally just, I think I was driving somewhere and literally 20 minutes later, we're still talking about like, you're like, I don't know, I got this place I could go to, or maybe this spot, or this is what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. And it's just content. And that's kind of when you're talking about like starting on the political side and starting to like look at maybe running for an office and like all that stuff. So it's just kind of funny that it came to this now.
Yeah, I remember. I always say that like plans have a way of adjusting, right? The structure usually stays the same, but maybe the windows or the shutters or something kind of changes in that building. And when I originally had that conversation with you, I legitimately had an idea about running for office, like state office, because I thought to myself like, well, I don't want to be, a hypocrite and just constantly complain from the sidelines and then not do anything to actually change it. It wasn't until I went to Jefferson City and just to shake some hands, meet some people, do some networking, that I realized, Rob, not all of our state politicians, but I realized that if I really want to make change, and as cliche as this sounds, it's easier to just make money and lobby. I hate to say it like that, but like if I'm one of 170, or if I just make enough money, I can get any legislation I want passed.
Yeah.
And that's the honest truth. And it hit me like a wall. And that's why I kind of go back and forth with like the current political landscape and how to navigate it. I don't necessarily know if it's broken or if it's working adequately or properly. I would say that at 31 years of age, I still have a lot to learn. But I do know that once I went down there, I was like, running for office is not going to be where I do the most good. It'll be from the private sector to the public sector, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, lobbying, funny thing is my mom worked for a lobbyist company. Grew up in Central Illinois in Springfield. Well, that's where the capital is. So she worked for a lobbyist company for years. So like a lot of people, unless you're in that, don't understand what lobbyists do. I mean, it's pushing your agenda. It's getting people involved. It's talking to the right people that can then sway others in the office to vote certain ways to get things done.
Do you think it's like, do you think it's a net positive or negative, or do you think it's just something that is?
It's part of politics.
Part of politics?
Part of politics.
I know.
There's always going to be people that are from the outside using influences to get inside to then get what they want done.
I actually had a conversation with a person much more successful than I was. And he worded it because I was talking about Citizens United and how it needs to be essentially repealed because you can have super PACs that can give unlimited funds to a certain political candidate, yet me at the individual level can only give $6,600.
Right.
And then he basically responded, he's like, "We'll make more money and give to the PACs then, just like we all do." Like his reaction was like, "Hey, dummy."
Right.
There's
a way around it.
Well, not even a way around it, but like when you play basketball, do you bitch that you have to dribble? No, because everybody else is dribbling. So it's like the way he explained it to me was more like, I make money, Ariane, so I have influence. If I choose to use my influence in an altruistic way, I can.
Right.
If I choose to use influence in a negative way, I can. That's the beauty of America. I can push my money and create or destroy. And I was like, damn it, when you word it like that, when you break it down, it's freedom. It's like I have the freedom to spend my money in whatever way I want. Like you're not hindering me or limiting me. It's just, it seems like a lot of lobbying is pushing certain agendas that are actively making life worse for the vast majority of Americans, but not for the vast minority of Americans. And I guess my only thing is, at what point does the pendulum swing so hard to where now life is even worse for them as well? I think you're seeing that in real time. Yeah. When you got Silicon Valley now doing fundraisers for Trump, I think that's the pendulum swinging too far, and they realized, hey, we lost the sauce. We need to bring it back to equilibrium.
Yeah.
So I there's an honesty to it. It's an interesting realm. I'm actively pursuing and learning in real time. So like if you ask me in a month, maybe I have a different opinion. I mean, 3 months ago, I thought
Right.
Citizens United should have been repealed and replaced.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I can see why it is in. I also think that the way you should do it is not necessarily limiting individuals, but just putting a cap on campaign finance. Like let's say you can't spend more than $50 million on a presidential run, like a presidential campaign, regardless of who gives you the 50 million,
Right.
whether you get 50 million people giving you $1 or one person giving you 50 million, you can't spend more than 50 million. But let that be as it is, and then it's an equal playing field.
Yeah.
Use that money however you see fit. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, then you're limiting the contributions and tax benefits of anyone giving as much money as they want to.
Correct, but then and you're right, we would be, and,
Yeah.
and then the argument would be, well, who would set that rate? Like,
Yeah.
why 50 million, not 51 million? And yeah, the problem with this is both sides have a legitimate argument. Like, if you're an individual that doesn't have means, you want your vote to be the same as the person with money in the bank. So like, I'm a person, you're a person, we each have one vote. But the reality of the situation is leverage and influence doesn't operate in that world.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows anybody with means knows that these people can create, these people can do, these people can kind of shape the world around them. You would just hope that they would do it in a manner that's better for all, not just themselves. And that's the thing is like, I think what's really underlying all this is a sense of patriotism needs to come back, because we used to be a country that was like, ask not what your government or what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Right. Now it's like, it seems like every presidential candidate is just promising shit. I'm going to get you this. I'm going to do this for you. How about like,
run the company.
How about tax me less? Let's not go to war. And can we bring some of our money back like into our own shores? Like, do we have to help the world out? Because like right now, people can't even like afford bread. Yeah. What are we doing?
Well, that's the funny thing with that, tax less. I think there was me and myself, they just randomly scrolling through something. It was like, the 1800s or whatever was like 2% tax. And it was like revolution.
Oh,
like
1776. Yeah.
Now 40%. I had people just sitting there on their iPhone, just.
I saw that same one on Facebook. But here's.
Yeah. But it's funny because that's what the 2%. But I mean, can you imagine if 2% tax now? I mean, you're getting taxed on
I would
everything.
shit my pants.
Yeah.
In happiness.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think like if you're asking me, are we, when people talk to me about like the deficit or, government spending, I always say there's never an argument or there's never a conversation to be had about the current spending. It's always tax more, pay your fair share, all this other shit. I'm just like, guys, we bring in roughly $5 trillion in taxable income to this country every year.
Yep.
We spend 6.1 trillion. If this was an individual, if I told you I made $5,000 a month, but I spent $6,100 a month, would you tell me that I have a money-making problem or a budgeting issue?
Right.
I'd be like, hey, man, like, don't get the avocado toasted.
Well, it's the same theory. Is like, even with people in their personal lives, it's like, there's two things you can do. Make more money or spend less. Well, guess what? They're either going to tax more, because they're not spending less, so it's going to continue to go that way.
Well, it's
until something happens. I don't know what that could be.
If it was an individual, you would say they have a money spending problem. We all say it like Tom's bad with money.
Yeah.
The government does it. We're fiscal irresponsibility is now at the behest of paying more.
Right.
I always say when the Pentagon can pass an audit, then we can start talking about taxing me more. Until then, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay more taxes. I don't care. There's no argument anyone has presented me that taxing us is A, going to do anything about the deficit, B, you're going to somehow tax us into prosperity, however that's going to happen, or C, that increased taxation will create economic growth when human history, not even American history, human history would beg to differ. Yeah. I think it's easy for people to feel down and out and want to look for something to blame because that's the scapegoat. And the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for what I'm about to say, if you were a loser, like if you are financially heartbroken in the Middle East, in India, in Eurasian Peninsula, I'd feel bad for you. Like, man, you might be dealt a bad hand, right? If you are not economically viable in America, you have nowhere else to look but the mirror. You have every opportunity afforded to you to do better in your life here. Now, is it becoming increasingly difficult? Yes. Like I would say 2024 is much more difficult to sustain yourself than 2020.
Yeah.
But then you have to look at the variables as to why. Newsflash, it's not internal.
Right.
It's external. So I would just simply say, if you're in a position that you're not comfortable or happy with in America, first look inward, because that's where it starts. And then if you're doing all the things you need to do, if you're working the 40-hour job, if you're, watching your budget, if you're doing all these things, I'm not saying you have to go to college and all this other stuff. Do blue collar work. It doesn't matter. As long as you're a functioning member and stabilizing member of society, I'm happy with that. But then if you're doing everything you need to do, then you need to start looking around yourself. And then what are the obstacles being presented to you? Who's hurting you? I guarantee you it's not your neighbor. I guarantee you it's not the police officer, the fireman. It's your local politician. It's your federal politician. It's the people creating the rules of the game that we're all playing. Yeah. Rob, I'm glad we started with that, because then we could get the politics completely out.
It wasn't even supposed to go that way, but that's all right.
No, it's a meme. It's a running meme at this point. Yeah. I get people like, someone sent me a meme that was like the guy who did Richmond, north of Richmond.
Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men,
I forget his name, the singer.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, let's not talk about politics, me, 0 drinks in. And he's like screaming.
Right.
I was like, that's me. Right. Not a single episode can go by without me being like, hey, have you talked about the deficit?
Right.
No, but the reason I brought you on is we've talked to a lot of MMA fighters, coaches. I do want to get someone from the state on. I want to get Tim on from the state. That'd be fun. And maybe like
might get hard. That might be hard. But
I know.
I mean, but still, he's got the.
Well, I think
the position he's in, it might be tough.
Yeah, I think if I tackle it from a certain way, he might be wanting to do it, because it's more informative. Like I genuinely have questions about how the state runs a show. But one of the nice things about having a promoter / matchmaker on is there are aspects of fighting that I have seen from my vantage point as the competitor, as the coach. Yeah. But I've never matchmade a card. I've never had to like call gym owners and be like, hey, I'm thinking about making a card together. Who do you got? How do you have them? I'm genuinely interested in asking you a bunch of questions related to MMA, but we're not going to stay there for long. Just terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now. But if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show. But before we get to Shamrock and all these other things, I'm genuinely curious. When you're formulating a card, do you start from like the main event and work your way down? Do you start from the first fight and work your way up? Can you explain to me like the thought process behind, I'm at my whiteboard, it's blank. Where do you start when you're formulating a card?
So I try to start more on, like right now, like we've got an event coming up in a couple weeks. I'm 2 events ahead of it right now. So trying to understand like, okay, what's some names that we want to get on there? You know, whether that's amateurs, pros, not saying it's going to be the main event, co-main event, first one on the pro card. Could be one of the early fights on. The other thing I do is who I wasn't able to use on the last one. So, like, if there's a coach that's like, hey, I've got these 3 guys, we've only found a matchup for one. I've already talked to him, said, hey, let's I've got these 2 already on. So it's not like I'm just like, oh, let's look for a main event and nothing else happens till then.
Yeah.
Main thing is just keeping everybody busy. I mean, if there's a coach that has 3 fighters and can't find fights for them, like, I'll do my damnedest to find it. If I can't do it this time, right to the next one. Gives us more time. Same thing with some of the pros, too. It's like, if we don't get a match, it's like, let's get on the next one. Give me more time. You know, like, instead of trying to get something in 6 weeks, like, okay, now we got 3 months to find the right type of fighter, the right record, what they're needing to fight.
I was gonna get into that because I feel like in MMA, when I was fighting, you can actually confirm or deny. I like to think that I was easy to work with because I wasn't super picky. I wasn't picky at all about the opponent, other than I just wanted them to be good. Wasn't super picky about the pay or anything like that because I knew that the money would come with the name and the notoriety and everything. And to be frank with you, Rob, and I say this to a lot of fighters, is like I made more money outside of fighting because of fighting than I did through fighting. Say whatever you want about that. You know what I mean? The logistics, the economics. But I always said, like, win fights and money will come. Don't, and it won't. But when you're formulating these cards, you're talking about, like, you're talking to these fighters and all that. How much of the relationships are with the coaches and then with the fighters? And then how is that paradigm different?
It's changed.
Okay.
It's changed. So this year's our 25th year.
Congratulations.
So 1989 or 98. 1998 was our first event.
I was 6 years old.
You were 6 years old. There's fighters on cards that weren't even born yet. So literally, we had somebody in Kansas City not too long ago that literally just turned 18 like a month before.
Holy shit.
And I was just like, and yeah, it's just crazy. Like, wasn't even alive. Parents probably weren't even together. You never know. But I don't know. Back then there wasn't social media. So literally the relationship was definitely with the coaches. Like, well, let's be honest, not a lot of people had cell phones. So like you had to have that relationship with the coach. The coach would be holding it all. And there's still some coaches like that. Like, don't talk to my fighter until we get him on the card. You know, like if someone's, and I try to do it a lot now, like if someone reaches out to me, first thing I ask, like if I don't know where they're at, where do you train at?
Yeah.
First thing I ask. You know, we get people from the website, we get inquiries from social media, Instagram, Facebook. First thing I ask, where you train at?
Do you like that aspect of that now fighters are coming to you versus you maybe having to go get fighters? Like, I mean, you're getting the labor source kind of asking for you. That must be nice.
Well, it's nice, but at the same time, like, there's no relationship there the first time you use them. If a coach is going to tell you if he's trained or not. And that's a lot of times what happens. It's like, I don't know who that guy is. Or they said they said you're training him. And the guy's like, well, I don't know who he is.
Does that matter because you're trying to match them up accordingly, or does that matter because you're not trying to step on toes?
I don't like stepping on toes. Okay. I mean, because without the coaches, the guys aren't training somewhere. So, like, you got to keep the coaches on your side.
Yeah.
I mean, things happen all the time. I mean, it doesn't matter what card you're on, whether it's some small card, big card, mid-range. I mean, even the UFC, like, Conor McGregor just dropped out. I mean, people drop out all the time. Sometimes they get replacements, sometimes they don't. We work hard to try to find a replacement. Sometimes it just doesn't happen.
How often does that happen? Pullouts? Every card?
I'd say at least 3 every card.
No way.
Yeah.
3 separate fights or 3... Like,
oh, it's never the same. It's never 2 guys fighting each other. Come on. It's never that easy.
And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
Right. It's
no
never
worries.
that easy. It's always like one person here, one person there. Or like records are just opposite, you know?
How much of your job is... Because you were saying how you basically plan a card 3 cards in advance, right? So like you have
you kind of like you got the core middle.
Yeah, you have your next event, you have the event after that you're planning for, and then you're like, hey, we should probably get started on the 3rd one. Right. So like, let's say you're matchmaking.
Well, the good thing is, for us too is we set our events a year and a half in advance.
Yeah.
Just with the casinos and stuff like that, you have to.
Well, you guys have one of the. I feel like it's a double-edged sword. It's like something that is your strength, but could also be like a huge detriment to you as well as like your activity as a promotion. Because you guys do what? Correct me if I'm wrong. With Guns and do you guys count Guns and Hoses?
So we do some stuff with Guns and Hoses. Jesse's more involved in that than anybody being on the board and everything. We match and make for the MMA side of it, and I think Jesse does some work with the boxing side.
But I would consider that work on your
end. Yeah, it's still work on our end. So we're this year, I think we've got
14?
7. No, just 7 events. 7 plus the other one is 8.
No way.
Yeah, 5 in St. Louis, 3 in Kansas City, so 9.
Why did I feel like it was way more than that?
It used to be.
Okay.
So when we were at Lumiere, we did 8 at Lumiere.
Holy shit.
4 at River City, 6 at Kansas City.
Okay, that's why.
And the funny thing is that's about the time I met my now girlfriend, who I have my kid with. Her friends it was crazy. So like all of a sudden she would be going out and she's like, oh, well, Rob's going to come this weekend. And her one friend, and it's funny he said that, he's like, oh, did his weekend with his kids change? She's like, what are you talking about? He's like, we were always on the same weekend. Like I had my, my girlfriend had her kid, he had his kids. She's like, he doesn't have kids. But thinking about it, we were doing 8 and 10, 18 events. That's almost every other weekend.
Yeah.
When you take out Thanksgiving, holidays,
New Year's,
so literally
Christmas.
every other weekend, he assumed I had kids. So he's like, oh, I guess he's got his kids this weekend. So literally that's how much it was. Like we were going nonstop, like event to event to event. So that's kind of when we did the MMA ones, and then we had.
May I elaborate real quick? So like this gentleman thought that you had previous kids because you weren't there for weekends, so he just assumed that you had like children or some sort of obligation. When in reality, no, you're just like working at events because
working.
Shamrock is that
funny.
Yeah, that's insane.
So yeah, we did, and then we went. I think we did 18 a year for a couple years. Then we went back down to just 6 in St. Louis.
How did you do 18? That seems like an egregious number.
It was.
So obviously, you guys have cut back because it's unsustainable.
Well, not only that, so that's also when we started doing the boxing, kickboxing, MMA in the ring.
Okay,
so we were doing 4 of those at Lumiere. The next month we'd do, every other month we were doing an event. So then we would do 4 of the, I think it was XFN, Extreme Fight Night. That was the mixed event, boxing, kickboxing, and MMA in a ring. But then the next month we would do MMA in the cage at Lumiere.
And you would call that just Shamrock FC?
Right. And then we would have every quarter, we'd have a big one at River City. Literally every other month, we'd have one in Kansas City. So we had 8 at Lumiere, 4 at River City, and then 6 at Ameristar Kansas City.
In the 25-year span that you've done this, we were talking briefly, you started in 1998. I mean, you've had the invention, now cell phones, social media, tapology. With the transition of the times and this like new technology that can kind of quote unquote make your job harder, do you feel like matchmaking is easier now or more difficult? I'll explain why I asked that question. Maybe back then it was easier, quote unquote, because people didn't have enough information on one another, so fighters wouldn't be able to pick and choose their opponents the way they do now. Versus now, where you have like this unfettered communication. But I mean, fighters can come to you with 5 guys they want to fight, and I mean, now you're in this weird predicament where you're like, am I the matchmaker or are you guys?
Right. I think it's kind of twofold. Like back then, you literally relied on the coaches to have the information for you. Now you can get the information, like somebody
Google search away.
Right. I mean, literally, it was phone calls or driving to a gym, talking to the coach. Now you can do anything. I mean, you can Google. There's all their fights or fights that get uploaded. There's the record. You can click on them, who they fought. Drill down. It shows the records now. So I would say it's probably getting easier, and there's more. It's easier to find the fighters. But at the same time, I think the dedication from the coaches is much, and that's nothing against coaches now, but like the coaches were more involved
back then
with the fighters keeping their records and stuff like that. So they were, not saying they'd have like kind of like the old boxing book, you'd have the book that would show your stuff. I think now USA Boxing has online.
Yeah.
So you can actually have like a tapology for.
I remember before I went pro, I did a couple amateur boxing matches. I had to have a book. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, this is so weird. Like, why don't we just do digital? Literally, as I went pro, they made the move to digital. But it's funny that existed. But it makes sense because if you don't have some sort of like tangible, physical document back in the days previous, and now everything is cataloged, right? But back then, it's like you could easily lie. You could say, like, this guy's only 5-0. Meanwhile, he could be 15, 20-0, what have you. And then he's just going out there and, like, murking some guy. And then now you might look like the bad guy because you mismatched someone when in reality, you're just operating on information that you thought you had. How much of that has happened in your career where you felt like people lied to you?
I mean, people can still lie now.
You think?
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
It has to do with amateurs, though.
Not really. I mean, Tapology is how old? 10 years?
Yeah.
Sure Dog's a little bit older than that. MixedMartialArts.com, which is now the ABC database. I mean, you can pull up fighters that have fought probably in the mid-2000s, that their records will be different on Tapology than they are on Sure Dog, than they are on Mixed Martial Arts.
fair, but now you're talking about maybe like an older
Right, yeah, that's
crowd.
what I'm saying. But as far as like sandbagging now, kickboxing just now starting to get in Tapology because of the state athletic commissions. Most of them run
The amateur side.
the amateur side now.
Can you explain sandbagging to someone who doesn't understand what that means?
So sandbagging would be more like bring you in. Okay? How many amateur boxing did you have?
5.
No one knew that.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying, oh, this guy's 0-0 and they didn't want to, they Googled your name and put MMA or kickboxing after it, that's never going to show up.
Yeah,
Your
0,
wrestling
0.
won't show up. You know, so you got to think of it that way. So like that would be if the coaches or the fighter didn't say, oh yeah, this, or this.
So by
the other thing is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
There's no record keeping anywhere that this person's a purple belt, blue belt, black belt, unless on their social media they're putting that stuff out there, which I think starting to get that way to where a lot of people aren't. Like we used to have to deal with it with Justin Lawrence when we match him. Like he started fighting when he was 10 years old on our cards.
Jesus.
10 years old, kickboxing. But at the same time, it's like he's 10 years old, here's his fights. This is all he had. Well, then as we got going, then it's harder to find fights for him because people started to know him more. A lot of people would stop putting stuff on social media. A lot of them do now because everybody looks at social media. The first thing they do, like if I say, hey, I got this guy, what's the first thing someone's going to do?
Yeah, Google him.
Google him.
Yeah.
I can send a Tapology record, but it doesn't matter. They're still going to Google him.
Yeah.
And Tapology's not always right either. That's what's crazy about. Like literally just the other day, someone messaged me that's on the card coming up. They're like, hey, I thought I was kickboxing. I'm like, you are. Well, Tapology says it's MMA. I was like,
yeah, but they'll also adjust that after the fact. Yeah.
And that's the thing. So what a lot of people don't understand is Tapology isn't a true official recording site.
Well, do you mind if I give some context briefly? So when we're talking about Tapology, SureDog, and all these, what we're essentially saying is there are online databases relegated to the sport of like combat sports. So not just MMA, boxing, or kickboxing, but essentially all of it.
Right.
Tapology is one such directory where if I pop in, Ariane Zekti, you might get 3 or 4 different websites, SureDog, Tapology. There's one now that does it by like an AI algorithm and gives fighters like a point system, which is interesting.
Wow.
So like you can see how good a fighter is based on like the cumulative record. Anyway, but one of the things that these directories essentially rely on is kind of like Wikipedia, where anyone can kind of put in that information, and then over the course of time, it'll kind of shift and morph and kind of get better as time progresses. That's the same thing to Tapology. So like maybe you have X fighter who's going to fight, and they put it down as MMA today. It might be a kickboxing fight.
Correct.
Tapology doesn't know that. But then after the fact, after the event happens and everything is recorded by the state, and then they get the concrete evidence, they might go back and change that. So the reason we bring that up is they can be good references for historical data, but might not be super accurate for current events.
Which a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So like some of the newer fighters and stuff, they'll see something on Tapology or like, it's crazy. Like I'll see something, I'm like, I talked about this matchup for literally 4 days, didn't get anything confirmed on either side, and literally it's sitting on Tapology. It's
No
like,
shit.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. So I'm like, how? You know, like literally.
It has to be a coach. It has to be one of the people. Because anybody can make a Tapology account and put in information.
And put information on there.
Which is a strength and a weakness. Similar to Wikipedia.
Yeah. And the thing is like with the pro boxing and now MMA and even kickboxing is this way now, is the 2 major, literally, I think they're federal funded now, is the Mixed Martial Arts Database, which is ABC, which is American Boxing Commission, is also ran with BoxRec.
Yeah.
So that's why now the federal IDs are involved, and until the state took over in Missouri, we didn't have that. Like nothing. I would actually, after the event, the sanctioning bodies, whoever it was, whether it was Jason Cooper at the time, I think Craig Nacelle did one, you would actually fill out a document with all the information, email it to them, then they would upload it in.
Spire was Jason Cooper, and I believe Craig and Driesbach were BMF.
Yeah, BMF.
I think.
It wasn't bare knuckle fighting in that point, but I was like, if they got a website, they would be sitting pretty right now.
I'm operating on like 11 years of information, so and a lot of head trauma. So forgive me if I got those wrong, but shout out to the OGs that were keeping track before everybody was keeping track. You've been in this game for so long, Rob, that it's kind of hard for me to ask you questions, not necessarily for the current, but like also it's difficult to kind of talk about how things have changed because I want to kind of narrow down the things that have gotten worse or better, right, as time has progressed. And one of the things that I think has gotten better, perhaps you could agree or disagree, is with this increase of, I want to say, knowledge about opponents. Would you say that it's easier to matchmake because you have more concrete evidence of the historical aspect of a fighter's cumulative record? Where that's why I was asking you earlier if anyone's ever lied to you. Because, I mean, back in the day, Rob, you could be like, well, what's your guy? I'm a coach. If my guy goes out there and wins, it makes my gym look better. So it's in my best interest to try to get him a matchup where he's going to have the highest propensity to win. So I might say he's been training for 6 months and leave out that he's a college wrestler. Right? Or he's got one fight and I might be only talking about kickboxing when he's got 10 boxing matches. Where now I would say that would be harder to do.
Yeah. I mean,
so would you say that technology has made that aspect easier?
I think that's made it easier to like verify fighters.
Okay.
Like verify their background, verify what they've done. Like, do they have a record anywhere? And there's Kansas is really big into smokers, which are just like almost like in gym fights.
Okay.
Because the commission doesn't really have. I mean, the commission's decent in Kansas, but like you can do smokers. So like, let's say Mike Rogers wants to put a fight on in his gym, and it's kickboxing or something. It's not regulated. They just come in and compete. Now, is it maybe going towards kind of the sport kickboxing that Chad does now, to where like I don't know if there's a record supporting that.
Chad who?
Chad Mueller. They do the IKF point kickboxing stuff.
Okay.
But I'm saying like things like that won't probably be. And I don't know.
Considered
I don't know if
fight.
It's recorded anywhere. Or, I don't think Tapology does. But like, if someone's had 3 of those, and they're like, "Well, this guy's 0-0. He hasn't had any MMA fights or kickboxing fights, but yet there's a smoker point kickboxing tournament." That type of thing.
That brings up an interesting question about like the legitimacy of competition versus training. Because I mean, if we're gonna count IKF, which is point sparring, right? Like, there's no knockouts, or hopefully there's no knockouts. Yeah. Would you consider that a fight? Because I wouldn't. But then if you don't consider that a fight, would you consider hard sparring a fight? If you got guys going into the gym and they're doing 10 rounds, hard sparring, maybe they have headgear on, shin guards on this thing. They might have the protective gear. But if they're sparring hard, I would consider like hard spar. I've had harder sparring rounds than I have had fights. So I guess my question is like how... Maybe all of this is useless.
I just think it's one of those things to where the way someone trains, whether it's going to be hard sparring or, point kickboxing tournaments or karate tournaments or jiu-jitsu tournaments, all that comes with a experience of like, you've got experience in going against people that aren't your training partners.
Yeah.
So fair. I think that's the difference. You're not punching your buddy, you and Chris Craig. I mean, you guys, I think you broke something a couple times in the gym with him. I don't know. I remember, or kicked somebody in the head.
You're in a controlled environment where you feel comfortable with the same guys.
Right. To where some of these other ones, you're trying to win.
Yeah.
So I think
trying to hurt somebody.
Right. Well, even in jiu-jitsu, like you're trying to win. Like, yes, you're trying to win the rounds in sparring because that's where you get better and that's what progresses. But like, you're not trying to win.
No, I never felt.
It's trying to work.
I never felt the adrenaline in training the way I did in a fight. You are correct on that. And I always told people that it takes time in fights to get that.
But I do think, and I don't want to take that away from it, I do think those things are very valuable.
Yes.
To get things started for someone that might want to. A lot of people come in gyms, every gym across the U.S. They want to fight. Well, until someone gets punched, was Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a game plan until you get punched. Some people don't know what it's even like to get punched. Like one time, like never been in a fight in grade school, never been in a fight, like just those parts of it, or didn't do a combat sport or any type of competitive physical thing. And then they're like, oh, I want to come in and fight. Well, those type of things help them. Like, Have you ever had someone yank on your arm or take you down, slam you on your head, like that type of stuff? Or
You have an older brother.
have you been kicked in the leg, like hard, like and meaningful, kicked in the head, So those things do, I think, help. It's just a matter of like some of the stuff that goes back to the same thing. Like some people train and then some people train, like
Yeah.
you just can't. It's
Or
hard
you
to
have
weigh the difference.
There's levels to it. You have the hobbyist who
Right.
maybe trains for a workout. Then you got the person like a Brett Dieters who is a physical specimen, but he just trained because he wanted one fight and he was like, hey, I'm done. And had a great kickboxing match.
Yeah.
Then you got guys that want to maybe do this at like the amateur level to see how far they can go.
Yeah.
Then you got the guys that might be ex-college athletes
Right.
that are like, no, I want to make a career out of this. And then you got the real like what I call not the athletes, but the fighters, and those are the guys that make it to the next level.
Yeah.
Those are the guys who eat, sleep, breathe, combat.
Right.
We were talking earlier about like relationships between fighters and coaches. Would you say that coaches feel like partners to you in this? How would you describe, because in business we have B2B, business to business relationships, and B2C, business to consumer. How would you look at Shamrock FC and Wolves Den, St. Charles MMA, ESMMA, the church? Like, do you look at them as like partners, like a B2B? Do you look at them as like a labor source, maybe more of like a consumer base? Like, how do you look at these gyms? What is your
No, I'd say
relationship
they're
with
more
them?
like B2B because think about it. Like, we have a platform that's a marketing platform for their gyms.
Yeah.
If they have a guy that wins, I'm sure people notice that.
Yeah.
So it's a marketing tool. It probably helps their gym enrollments. Not saying if they lose it hurts it, but at some point there's not anybody that doesn't lose.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, everyone's going to lose at some point.
In MMA, I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, in combat sports in
Right.
general, I would agree. It's
Right.
not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah. And then after the win is how you rebound from that. But I would say definitely a B2B type relationship.
I'm going to ask you a couple harder questions now, and if there's something that I probe on that you don't want to answer, or I'm getting too personal, or I want to keep this high level, so I'm not asking like how Shamrock FC works. I'm asking more of like the psychology behind some of the questions. These are inquiries that I genuinely have. Why is it that we do in MMA fight and win? Like, why is it that these contracts are set up in a way where if you lose a fight, the fighter loses? I'm talking about professionals now, so forgive me, amateurs. We'll get to you in a second. Why is it that like if I sign up to have a fight, it's like, hey, Arion, you'll get $500 to show, $500 to win. To me, it's kind of weird because like
Boxing doesn't do it. Boxing doesn't do it.
No.
Fight, win,
by the way,
bonus.
I'm not.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Agreeing with you. Like, why do we do it?
Is it just because it's the
Ask
market?
Dana. I think he started it.
Yeah, but you guys have your own promotion, right? So like at any moment, you guys can like stray from that golden path, right? Is it just because you want to follow like this is what the top tier promotion does? We're gonna mimic them. Is that the mentality?
I guess so. I've never thought of it like that. Like, it just MMA. It was fight and win bonus.
Because I'll be honest with you. Let's say I'll use my 500 and 500 analysis. Or if you told me, Arion, I'll give you, like, I'll break even with you. I'll give you 750 flat. And if you lose, you get 750. So you'll gain 250. But if you win, you'll lose that 250. It's kind of like a give and get, right? It's like at the end of the day, it's kind of like the total expense for the promotion shouldn't really change because like whether I win or lose or he wins or loses, the total payout should be roughly the same. Do you think fighters would accept a flat pay that was slightly less over the show and win purse that currently exists?
I think some would, some wouldn't.
Some would, some wouldn't.
I think it's like in any business, people get commission on sales, or I'm sorry, or like bonuses and things like that. Goals
Based on performances.
Based on performance. So maybe that's it. I've had guys ask for flats, but at the same time, it's like you said. Well, I'm not going to give you flat of whatever
the win is.
The win is, So it's like it's a situation I think that's just got to be touched on. Depends on who the person is.
Yeah, it was just always something so weird to me because like I've been on a winning side and I've been on the losing side, right? And I never fought for the money, but I will tell you that when I lost,
it sucked.
And it's like, well, you have the emotional
Yeah,
distress.
no,
of
I'm
like
saying
the
it's
defeat.
money.
And then at the end of the night, when it comes time to get the check, you're like, oh, that's right. Not only did I lose my fight,
Right.
now I got half my money.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was like kind of like that 1-2 punch, right? It's like I got the loss and I got half my money taken away.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I thought to myself, like, why is it done this way? So I guess the answer in a nutshell is because that's the industry standard.
That's just the industry standard. I mean,
Do you get guys that come up to you and ask you for like a flat?
I've had a couple people.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, we'll talk about it, and we've paid
If it makes
flats.
sense.
Yeah, we've paid people on flats before.
Okay, so there's no
Yeah.
real preference for you. It's
No.
just kind of like case by case basis.
No.
Can I ask you another question? Why is it that amateurs, like the distinction between amateur and pro is pay? Because I know some amateurs, like, let me know if you agree. When you get to a certain level at amateur, when you're like 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 amateur, you're fighting other 6-1, 7-1.
Yeah.
You would actually benefit from going pro because then you could fight some guy who's 0-0, 0-1, what have you. You'll have an easier fight. I was 10-0 as an amateur, and then I went to the pro ranks. I would say that my pro debut, even though it was a tough fight, was easier than some of my amateur fights. So why is it so like this constitution or this distinction between pro and am is pay and not some sort of skill set? Like, this is more of a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Would it not make more sense to say you're an amateur fighter until you hit a certain number of fights, until a certain number of competitions? Then you can elect to become professional and your rank is like reset. Because personally, Rob, and I understand that this might not fit to like the business aspect of fighting, I am a firm believer that if you're going to throw shin bone, like if you have shin guards and knee guards, all these other things, then don't pay these guys. But why is it that because you don't throw elbows at me or a knee to my head, but you can throw a shin bone at my temple, suddenly I can't get paid as an amateur? I think the distinction between pro and am being money is kind of like a dumb distinction. I would say the better option would be experience. Because then a guy can't be like 0-8 and go pro. Because I believe, I don't know if that's necessarily the case now, but we've known of certain fighters with losing amateur records, probably should never have gone pro, who were able to because there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think the amateur and pro distinction, and I don't know the law, so it could be part of with the what's the boxing, the federal boxing law? It's the
Ali Act?
The Ali Act.
Okay.
It could be in there. I don't know, but that was about the records and that was like promoter, matchmaker, everything, all in one.
The Ali Act is actually a large piece of legislation that incorporated contract negotiation, pay for the fighters, transparency between promotions, and predominantly fair use of what was it? If it was found that you lied about anything about your fighter, there were legal repercussions you could go after. Like the Ali Act gave fighters more teeth to go after promotions and other fighters.
Yep. But I think maybe, I'm guessing probably from the Olympics, from when it was started, like if you're getting paid for something, you can't be considered an amateur anymore.
That makes sense.
But then, like, now you have to look at it. Look at college sports.
Vasily Lomachenko was what, 300 boxers? No, it was like 150 something and 3 as an amateur boxer.
Right.
Goes pro is 0-0. Come on.
Right. But then look at what's the distinction now? I mean, look at pro athletes or amateur athletes, football players, gymnasts. They're making millions of dollars now in college sports.
Oh, name, image, likeness?
Right.
Yeah.
So now they're considered still an amateur?
Yeah.
So it's like, where does that distinction set?
That's actually a very good question.
You know,
I think the distinction is what you're getting paid for.
Right.
So like these college athletes are not being paid
performance.
for football. They're not being paid for baseball. They're being paid for their name, their image, and their likeness based on the marketing aspect of.
But if they're on a losing team, their name, image, likeness
has
is going
less
to be worth
value.
shit.
There you go. But it's
So back to what you're saying about amateurs and going pro too early.
yes.
So since the state took over in Missouri, just Missouri, that's why I want to say that, because that's the one we deal with. An amateur cannot turn pro with a losing record, and they have to have at least 5 official recorded fights.
Now. Okay.
Prior to this, I agree with you 100%. There was nothing. There's other states right now too. They're the same way. Like, You can be 0-1 as an amateur and go pro.
So I guess my question is, so we're in agreement that makes sense to me. Like, if you don't have a winning record as an amateur,
Right.
how could you go pro?
Right.
And if you haven't even had at least 5 fights, how could you go pro? I guess what I'm trying to say, though, is, like, I also think amateurs should get paid. I am of the belief that no one should fight for free if it's a legitimate fight. If I'm throwing my shin bone at your head, you should make money. Now, if it's 16-ounce gloves and shin guards and headgear, that's not... Sorry, guys, it's not a real fight to me, right? I think MMA is, by virtue of the sport, more brutal. There are more ways to lose in MMA than any other combat sport. Right. And I just think that there should be some sort of compensation for the amateurs. Now, I don't think that some guy going in 0-0 should make money, because they're just trying to see if they want to get into the sport. But if you are a 10-0 amateur killer, and...
But I guess my question is, when is that... The law is the law, right?
Yes.
You can't change that. But when is that the responsibility of the coach? No. The coach or the fighter to want to go pro or turn pro. Like, if you got an 8-0, what was your amateur record?
I was 10-0 as an amateur.
10. Okay. Why didn't you go pro at 6-0?
A school.
Okay.
For me, it was education.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So at some point, either the fighter has to make a decision, or the coach and the fighter have to make a decision. It's, okay, we're going to go pro. But I guess my question is where it's at now, it's not like amateur boxing where the people have 150 amateur fights.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like that. So, like, at what point, and I think that's when the state did it and said, okay, 5 amateur fights that have to be official, which means they have to be recorded by an official state commission. It can't be whatever.
The smokers.
Right. So I guess at that point, it's like at some point, that's when the decision has to be made.
What do you think about my context, though? Like, at a high level, when I tell you I think amateurs should get paid, what is your reaction to that? Do you think I'm being too generous to these amateur fighters? Do you think that some of these amateur fighters don't deserve it because they don't have the skill set that affords it? Because for me, it's more not the skill set. Because I'll be the first person to tell you, like, when I go to a Shamrock card, I don't know half the card. When I go to a Nemesis card, I don't know half the card. So there's a legitimate argument promoters can make and saying, like, hey, no one's coming in outside of, like, the immediate family and friends of the guy who's 1-0 or 0-0. Why am I going to pay them? They're basically like, I'm giving them the platform. They now have an opportunity to compete. You're welcome, right? It's a give and get. But, like, let's say some guy is like 8-0, amateur, local killer, about to go pro. Like, if I said that guy should make some money, what is your response to that? Do you think I'm being too generous? Do you think that I'm kind of like, Ariane, you don't understand the business aspect of this and what you're saying? Like, what is your reaction to me saying amateurs should get paid?
I'm going to say that no matter what my view is, I still have to abide by Tim Lukenhoff and the state's rules.
Athletic Commission.
So that's up to them.
Maybe
which would be a great thing. Like you said, you want to bring Tim on here, so I think that's a great question for him.
I just think it's weird that I can pay amateur fighters for, like, a myriad of things, but then I can't pay them to fight, which is, I don't know. I also, I don't have experience in the promotion aspect. So a lot of what I'm asking, and the reason I have you on, is because I do want to probe you for information. Like, this is what I think. Explain to me my strengths and weaknesses of my thought. One of the things that drives me absolutely fucking crazy is when fighters miss weight, there can be a negotiation. Like, if it's half a pound or a pound, I'm with you. But why is there not a structured format for missing weight to where it's detrimental to the guy missing weight? I'll give you an example. If you come in half a pound overweight or a pound overweight, if the other fighter wants to continue to fight you, fine, and then have a tier structure for that. Like, if it's half a pound, 20% of the purse. If it's a pound, 30%. If it's 2 pounds and they want to accept it, 50% of the purse, right? Why is it that, like, someone can come in 5 pounds overweight and now the pressure is on the other fighter to, like, accept the fight, right? We assigned up. I'm a bantamweight, so 135. I come in, I make weight. If my opponent's like 136, I'm still accepting that fight.
Yeah.
But if my
But are
opponent's
you accepting that fight with no contingency because he missed weight.
No. There needs to be repercussions for that, right? So like 20% is fine, but I'm saying me as a fighter, I'm accepting that fight, and 1 pound is not, in my opinion, is not the make or break. But if someone comes in 5 pounds overweight, it's not like the state comes in and says, this is like, you know, I don't know what the solution is. Like, do you give them a loss for being 5 pounds overweight? Do you give?
So I think for excessive,
Missing there should be a repercussion.
No. I think so. I think it's happened a couple times, and I don't know for sure, and I don't know if it's even a rule with the state or not. But I do know in the past for someone that missed weight by
a good
margin, or repeated missed weights, I do know that win or lose, they've been suspended for a certain amount of time from the commission.
Fair
to where they can't compete since then.
Let me narrow my question then. For me,
I see what you're saying. Like if someone comes
the onus is now on the guy who made weight. Like I made weight, I did everything I was supposed to do. Now it's like if Arion doesn't accept whatever it is that we're about to negotiate, I'm not going to fight. So like,
but you made money. But you made weight, which is how it should be.
Yes.
You made weight.
I did everything that I should.
You? Right.
And like I said, I'm not saying that like if it's half a pound over, the fight should be called off. But what I am saying is, I've seen guys come in 5 pounds overweight, and then if the other guy doesn't accept, it's like he's the pussy, he's all these other things, and it's like that's not fair to the individual. And then there have been times where fighters have missed weight and lost. I feel like justice was served. There have been times where fighters miss 4 or 5 pounds, put the onus on the individual, and then beat that guy. I feel like that shouldn't count as a win. I feel like you can compete, make your money. This is a no contest. If you lose, it counts as a loss. If you win, it's a no contest. I understand that I'm being very hyperbolic. Yeah. I'm going to the extremes. But I guess my question is, do you think there's a place to make missing weight more... There needs to be more discipline to it. Like, if this is done, there needs to be repercussions.
Yeah,
and the responsibility shouldn't be on the guy who did everything.
There needs to be something there, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, it hurts the promotion.
Yeah.
I mean... If you make weight and whoever misses weight, and you're like, no, 4 pounds, not doing it.
Yeah.
You know, well then
you're down a fight now on the card.
Down a fight on the card. Case in point, look at who was it?
Josh Augustine.
Oh,
over in Canada, he missed by like 6 pounds.
Oh wow. I was thinking Sean what's it? The kickboxer in the UFC. Engel fought him in kickboxing way back when. Wonder Boy, Stephen Thompson.
He missed weight?
No, his guy did. And then, if I remember, he like a year or two ago, his guy missed weight.
And then he lost to him?
No, he just said, I'm not fighting.
Oh, okay.
And the UFC, like...
Oh, hand blasting him for it? Like,
right, yeah.
I don't like that.
But you know what I'm saying? So, like, but what do you do at that point? Like, I think it's... Everybody's hands are tied. Because it's like...
I think you have to punish them. But what
do you punish them with?
Money.
Okay, but so if the fight doesn't happen, they're both punished.
If the fight doesn't happen, I know. This is the tough part of the question.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So if the fight doesn't happen, you're punishing him with what? He doesn't.
Well, I think
he didn't make weight, so he doesn't get paid anyway.
That's why I think there needs to be like a tier, right? Like if you're a pound or less over, right? 20% of the purse. If the fighter accepts, okay. If
Purse
it's 2 to 3 pounds,
purse or everything.
What?
Purse or both?
Both. It has to be because if the guy does beat you,
okay, that's why I was asking that.
I'll give you a prime example. When I fought Dylan Tolbert, it was like that. Remember, I was over by 0.4, 0.2. In my defense, that was also post COVID. I lost 60 pounds in 3 months.
I remember seeing you look like death.
So I'm not saying that it can't happen, but like 0.2, 0.3, that's not the difference maker. Yeah. I gave Dylan 20% of my purse, and I won that fight, right? So I gave him 20% of my show and my win. And I didn't, you can attest to this because we talked about it. Did I complain? Did I said, nope, here you go, Rob. You know what I mean? But if I would have shown up 5 pounds overweight and Dylan wouldn't have wanted to fight me, what could I have said? I would even be okay if there was a fine. I would even be okay if there was a fine.
But the fine would have to come from the state commission. Okay. Because they're the only ones that can control anything like that. Because then, just like when everyone has a federal ID or like your driver's license. You got a
Yeah,
license.
getting the state involved.
The state has ownership of that. So anything they put on it, like if there's suspension, it's on that license ID. If so, any type of fine, it would probably have to be on that ID. And then I don't know, but then again, like where would that fine? Who would the fine go to?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, does the fine go to the fighter that won or lost in that? Or if they didn't take the fight. So it's like it's a tough.
I definitely don't want to find a fighter who didn't make money if there's not a fight.
Right.
It's a tricky situation, man. I guess I feel like maybe you add it to the record. Every fighter now has 2 records: on weight, off weight. This guy is 9-0 on weight, 2-0 off weight. He's hasn't made weight twice, let's say.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
I don't even know if
it's a tough one.
It's a tough. I'm curious. By the way, this is probably the first time we'll ever do this. If you watching this feel like you have like a solution to this, put it in the comments.
Yeah.
This has been something that I've thought about. Like I personally,
because everybody's hands are tied at that point. Like,
but shit also happens.
Right.
So like I don't want to say like, oh, you were over by a pound.
I don't
fights
think
off.
1 pound is. I mean, it's missing weight, yes.
But
missing weight's.
There's
4, 5,
levels
6, 7,
to
8.
missing weight.
Right.
There's levels to missing weight. I've had fighters that I fought that have missed weight by like 4 pounds.
Right.
And then what drove me crazy was it was still 20% because it was handled by the state. So the guy's almost half of our weight class overweight, and I only get 20% of his purse. I wanted 50.
Yeah.
I wanted 50% of his purse. I'm like, brother, half of your money's going to me. If you beat me, I'm still getting my show money, right? Or my win money. But I couldn't do that. The state wouldn't allow it. I was like, this is kind of insane. Like we should have a tiered structure. If you're so much weight, 0 to 1 pounds overweight, a certain amount. 1 to 3 pounds overweight, a certain amount. 3 to 5, a certain amount. And then after 5, you get a loss on your record. If you show up on that scale over 5 pounds over, I get a win, you get a loss. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I also understand that I'm being very hyperbolic and all this other stuff, but I just think that when you're showing up 5 pounds overweight, that is disrespectful to the promotion, your opponent, your gym, everybody involved, anybody who bought tickets, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You get a loss. Don't show your face for another 6 months. Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the US, you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. Strategic bathroom breaks are always the best. So, thank you for going down the rabbit hole with me.
Yeah.
But
here's the thing: there's a lot of questions everybody has like that. I mean, like I said, why can't amateurs? I don't know. Legally, we can't do it.
Yeah.
So like that's something. Like you said, you would try to get someone from the state on it.
I would love to get Tim or someone from the state on.
Tim would be great because Tim ran the ABC for so many years, which oversees every commission. Then he's been at Missouri. I don't even know how long. Fuck. I mean, 15 maybe, maybe more. I mean,
he's been there the entirety of my professional career.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you don't know if he could be on. Can I ask you why you think that? Because of the podcast and the nature of the questions?
No. I just think
because we've had,
and this is just me saying that, like by all means. I just think he's got it. I know how his schedule is, which would suck. Like that guy. I mean, as many events that are going on in St. Louis. What a lot of people, or St. Louis, Missouri, just all Missouri, a lot of people don't understand this. He oversees tattoo licensing. He is over all professional registration. Tattoo artists.
Oh, not just athletics?
Not just athletics. So like they did a big tattoo convention here in St. Louis. Like he was down there getting them license ready. Getting them licensed. So like that, he's got, I mean, obviously wrestling. He does all the wrestling stuff. So not just athletics. So he is the...
When you say wrestling, you mean professional wrestling? Not like amateur folk style wrestling.
Correct. Okay. Just professional wrestling. Like, which is great because when wrestling comes here, that's a huge, I mean, taxes on that. God,
I'm sure it's great.
They do $1 million gate. That's good. good tax revenue for the state.
I would love to get him on.
And here's the thing. I think it's just conversation. Just ask him.
Yeah,
I'm sure he
will.
would.
But you know what the problem is, though? I know what the answer to a lot of questions will already be. He'll say, because that's the law.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, there's a part of me that wants Tim on because I know he's probably had... I mean, dude, think about it. He's been in this game for so long, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Promotions, fighters. He's seen it all.
Yeah.
What is it like? Shamrock FC show versus Nemesis show versus when UFC comes to town.
Yeah.
Those are probably completely different environments.
Oh, I'm sure.
Anyway, I'm going to reach out to him. I think that'll be a great episode. But thank you for going down the rabbit holes with me. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, Rob, is, and it's kind of on the same ilk of the conversation I had with Mike Rogers, is we've said it multiple times, 25 years in this game. 25 years matchmaking, promoting, seeing fighters come and go. You know, how are you still here?
Like,
do you still love it?
I enjoy it.
Okay.
And honestly, I think COVID helped.
Oh.
I think COVID helped just because it was the break. We had a break for no fights for how long?
20 years.
Yeah. I mean, 20 or so years. 20 years, you know. It's always different. Fighters are different. Events are different. You know, like, things change. You know, like, we had River City for a while. Then we went to Maristar. We got Maristar there. Like, it's always changing. Fighters are always different. New fighters are coming around. So it's just still a fun thing. I will admit I like not having 18 events a year.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean,
that seems insane.
Right. It was insane. And the thing is we pulled it off. I mean, we did it for probably 3 years. I mean, it was...
There's got to be some burnout as well.
I mean, not really.
No?
No.
Even I felt burnout with fighting. The nice thing about fighting is I always step away from it.
You can step away from it, but you have to think about it too. Is like, you have to set time away in your schedule for that training.
Yeah.
I don't have to sit there and be like, oh, between 4 and 7 o'clock tonight, I got to work on fight stuff. Literally, especially now with social media and everybody's on phone. I mean, I'll wake up, I've got guys messaging me at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I can get to it, you know, as soon as I get to it. You know, and the thing is too is, and I'm sure you're wanting to talk about this because you've got a child now and all that, but like, that kind of breaks it up, you know, because you're not just thinking of that all the time. You're not thinking fight stuff. Who's this? Who's it? You know, like, all that stuff to the side. I mean, you got your kid you can hang out with, do stuff with, watch them grow, like, enjoy that.
How do you manage that? Because you also have like your own full-time job, and then you have matchmaking, which can I ask a personal question? How many, and if you don't want to answer this, don't, but how many hours on any given week do you spend matchmaking? Is it like 40 hours? Is it 20 hours?
Well,
does it depend on the week? Like if you're 6 weeks out from a card versus the week of the card?
Well, it's hard to say hours. I mean, don't forget, along with the matchmaking also comes getting insurance put in, getting
the less sexy side,
the non-fun stuff, the administration side. So there's a lot of that goes on. My schedule now is like at night when my kid goes to bed, roughly 8:30ish. Try for 8:15, but now it's bright till 9, so it sucks for everything.
Yeah.
A good hour and a half is dedicated 100% to fights.
Yeah.
Whether it's making sure bout agreements are in, chasing down blood work, that's another thing with it. You know, chasing down blood work. Working on the next card. Like Kansas City, I'm already working on that, and that's in October. So like, it's hard to say in hours. I don't know. It's hard to say on hours.
That's funny that you say that because I do something very similar with Adriana. Like, she'll go to bed at a certain time,
and then you can do something else.
Do you feel bad? I don't know if this is gonna be too personal, but like sometimes my wife will feel a certain type of way because I'm not going to bed with them. Does that make sense? Like Adriana sleeps with us, by the way. So like my wife will go to bed with Adriana and like I'll lay down with them for a little bit and like we'll get the cuddles in, the kisses, all the honestly the shit that I live for. You know what I mean? And then it'll be like 8:30, baby's about to start going to sleep, and then I'm like, all right, I love you, give Bruna a kiss, and then I head to the computer, and that's when I do like the podcast, some other things that I have
nothing on the outside going on. You can focus.
Yes, I can actually work. How do you limit yourself to an hour and a half, dude? Because like, I'll be honest with you, I actively go to like 1 o'clock in the morning easily. Do you set a timer?
I'm 48. I'm 48 years old.
He said nature. Fuck me.
It's fun. I mean, 10 o'clock, I'm like, shit. Now, granted, I'm probably up 5:15, 5:30 in the morning, but I mean, that's just me. But, you know, some people are like, 10:30, man. Like, we get a babysitter, and like, so we like going to the St. Louis City soccer games. Love it. Like, we go to as many as we can. We have season tickets. Me and her do, and we have some friends that go with us.
Nice.
And those games are like, so we get a babysitter, and we'll do 6 hours. Get there at 6. The game's at 7:30, so the babysitter's there at 6. I'm paying till 12. Literally, we're out of that game at 10.
You're getting your money.
And I'm like, let's try to go to a bar. And literally, we're sitting there, and we're both like having maybe 2 more drinks. It's like, fuck, I guess we'll go home. It'll be like 11:30. Like, we're struggling and just I'm like ready to grab a Red Bull just to stay up for that last hour and a half or something. Yeah. But yeah, that's 10:30, man. It's 10:30. I'm in bed.
I do damage sometimes because I lose track of time. It's like I think to myself like, okay, like unfettered access to actually like sit down and chug away, and then before I know it, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, go fuck.
I mean, I've done it too, but it's just like one of those things. It's just you know the kid's getting up soon.
Yeah.
And I don't know what time she gets up, but you know, for a long time my kid was getting up at 6.
Same.
So it's like, and you know it's coming. So no matter how many drinks, if you have 1 drink or 5 drinks, or you work until 2 a.m, they're still getting up at 6. It doesn't matter.
I was explaining this to my father because he was asking me about like how my daughter's doing, his granddaughter, and I was like, I don't know how to explain this, but every morning our daughter sleeps with us. So and people are like, you let your kid sleep with you? Fuck yeah, because there's gonna be a time where she's not gonna stand me, and I'm gonna remember these times. Like, I will wake up. Because Bruna leaves early in the morning to go to work, so I take baby to daycare every morning. So like, I'll wake up and baby's already awake, staring at me, and like gets excited that I just woke up. And Rob, when I tell you, if I died and went to heaven, the way my daughter makes me feel every morning when I see her eyes might be the closest thing to what I think heaven might feel like. It is a constant reminder of why I work hard. It is a constant reminder of why I'm here as a man, as a father, as a provider. I advise all men on this planet to have kids. It'll make you a better man. It'll give you more to live for than just yourself. And obviously have kids with someone you like. It checks your ego.
Right. I mean, literally just had this conversation not too long ago with somebody. Things change when you have kids. All the shit that you thought was important or that you thought you needed to say or do or whatever, it doesn't matter.
No.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got a kid at home. That's all you care about. Like, make sure they have the best life, get what they want, and enjoy it. Like, and I think that's part of it too, man. It's like, and you'll start to get, I don't know how old your daughter's what, 2?
She'll be 2 in September.
2 in September. The craziest thing is like that difference between my son's 3.5 right now. Like the difference between 2 and or even like 2.5 and 3.5. I mean,
they grow so fast.
And they're so like, they're just everything changes every single day. So like literally you miss something every single day, and like here's the thing, they start to know, and when you're not there, or know if you're not there enough, or they just start and they'll call you on it. They've got personality, man. They'll call you on it. Like my son now, I'm like, I love him, but like I was out of town, and my girlfriend was telling me, she's like, she picked him up from school and he's singing a song. My daddy's gone, 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 gone. Like, I'm like, she's like, oh, you should have heard it. You would have been pissed. You'd have been like,
pissed.
Well, not pissed, but just destroyed. Like, oh my God, like they understand that, they feel it. And I think he said you had kids too. You get it. Like, there's a huge difference in that. Like, and that's why
Does it break your heart?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's why having less events is nice, and the thing is like, everybody's always like, oh, Rob, come out after the event. I'm getting home. My kid's up early. Like, what am I going to do? Stay out with
Not just that. Rob, I love you. I love
Yeah.
Kayla. I love all my friends. Nothing sounds better than hanging out with my daughter.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, let's go out to Capitol Grill. Let's do. I'd rather go home and watch her watch Coco Melon, or play finger painting with her, or watch her jump on the trampoline. I said this to my wife. The reason kids have beauty is because over the course of our lives, we've experienced things so routinely that we forget how beautiful this all is. Yeah. And then when you see someone young who, like, my daughter's like my mini-me. So, like, I almost see myself in her. And to see her experiencing things for the first time, jumping on a trampoline, hitting a baseball, and all these other things, and how ecstatic she gets, and how joyous she is, and she'll eat foods for the first time, and she's like, yummy, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it is yummy. Like, or it reminds you that everything you do in life is beautiful.
Right.
Even if you've done it for the 1,000th time, it's still, life is beautiful. And I think that's the gift my daughter has given me, outside of a newfound sense of responsibility, discipline, reason for existing. She's given me like a renewed sense of the beauty of life. Life got brighter. The sun got brighter. Colors are more vibrant. I owe a lot of who I am as a man to my wife and my daughter.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like, I would say they start to notice things, and like, and I deal with it now too, because he gets it. Like, he'll ask me questions when I'm doing something on my phone, and expect, you know, like, knowing that, almost like a test, like, are you going to answer me, or are you know, like, so they start to understand those things. So that's what I was just saying, like, right now, having that time to stay up till 1 a.m. and all that, you'll start to see in the next probably year and a half. Not telling you for sure, but you'll start to see a change. Well, you'll want to pull back a little bit to have that extra time sometimes.
Dude, you want to know what this is my...
But at the same time, you want to work and do as much as you can to give them everything
that I didn't have.
Right.
It's such a... I feel like every podcast we talk about politics and we talk about how hard it is being a guy. Sorry, ladies. I'm sure it's tough being a mother as well. This is not isolated to the gender. But it is truly a balancing act that, like, I don't know if I'm doing it right, Rob. That's the other thing, right? You don't know if you did a good job until they're 18, 19, and whether or not you could stand your kid or not. Yeah. All I know is the life I live now, like when I was 18, 19, 20, and I was staying up at night because I was so anxious about the future and I didn't want to be a loser and all these other things, I wish I could tell myself, like, hey, kid, don't worry. It'll be all right. Yeah. It'll be all right. Fatherhood is the shit. I advise all men to find the woman of their dreams. Don't get married if you don't want to get married. I don't care what it is. Come together. Do something bigger than yourselves. Pool resources. Become responsible. Become the man you should be. Be a father. It'll make you a better man. Yeah. Anyway, back to the promotion aspect. So, yeah, I mean, you've been in this for 25 years. The landscape has changed, so it's consistently
it's crazy.
Kept it fresh for you. Yeah. What's it like doing business with Jesse Finney for 25 years? You guys are friends. Yeah. Like, you've got to be good friends. Okay.
Literally, we lived, back in the day, we could have been common law. I think we lived together for...
Hey, listen, man, you know?
Right.
2024, it's more acceptable now.
Probably 2008 is when...
How'd you guys meet?
So we met bartending.
Okay.
We were both bartending. Harpo's on the Landing, which is now a parking lot for Lumiere. So going full circle here, craziness. So he was kickboxing at the time, amateur kickboxing, for a promotion out here at Stratford Inn. Promoter was Jim Jenkins.
Oh, man.
So that
when you say Stratford Inn, you talking about the building that just got demolished like a couple
Stratford
of months
Inn,
ago.
Yeah. Well, wherever we're at here.
I mean, it's around where we're at right now. I don't want anyone knowing the location of the podcast. Right. Lest I get vandalized.
Right. So he was fighting for Jim Jenkins.
Holy shit. Yeah. St. Louis is small.
Right. And then right about that same time, so in 97, we opened the gym down on Gravway.
You and Finney?
Yep. So I knew enough construction stuff that I could get by. He was training guys all the time. He was training because of his stepfather. Let
me take a step back. Yeah. You guys met each other bartending. How did you get from that to opening a gym together?
So they were training in, I think, a couple different places, like people's backyard, not backyards, but like garage gyms.
Back in the day, man, wherever you could.
And then he wanted to open a space, so then I was like, oh, I can help out with that. I can do carpeting, hang heavy, so
You were the
literally,
handyman.
yeah. So we started that, and then right about that same time, so that was, I think it was October, maybe September, October '97. Opened that. July 2000 or 1998 is when we had our first event, and it was more of a, and it's hard to say how, but I think it was more of like he was selling a bunch of tickets to the fights to friends and like different things, like like through
For
the
his
bar
own fights.
for his fights. He was
Yeah.
selling tickets to get people to go, and I think we're both just like, well,
Why don't we just do this ourselves?
why don't we just do it ourselves? So we're in the bar nightclub scene. So we wanted the first one we did. We had our slogan of bringing Vegas style fights to St. Louis. So we, at the time, I forget, probably Velvet or the Green Room or some nightclub down in Washington. We knew bartenders there and DJs there. So we had literally the lighting guy from there we rented lighting, brought it in. Like, people wore suits, and women wore dresses to all of our fights for so many years. Like, you, with your ticket, we had champagne on the tables, like the VIP table, the front row tables, like champagne. Yeah, it was just like an event to go out to. Like, literally, people were in suits, girls were in high heels, dresses, like, and that's kind of how it started. So we did, I think, two the first year. I think we did July and then November, and that was at Carpenter's Hall, which is still there. It's on Hampton. So we did that, and then I think we did that for a couple of them, and then we moved to, I think it was Two Heart Banquet Facility. I forget the timeline, man. It's hard to remember.
Well, dude, we're going 20-something years.
Right, yeah.
Right.
It was either that one, did some there, then we did some at, which we called it Union Plaza. It was at Grand and 40. You know where it used to be a Del Taco, then it was a Starbucks. That it was like that circle. There's a circle building right there.
Generations of businesses now.
It was like literally right there. It was like a hall. So we had fights there.
When did you guys get the contracts with? Was it Lumiere that was your first casino?
2012.
2012. So you guys have been in that business for a while.
Yeah, 2012. What a lot of people, and then through that we also did other stuff. So like, worked for Chuck Norris for a while with World Combat League. So we were going every other weekend doing World Combat.
G was the coach,
So
right?
G was one of the coaches. Jesse, they had a team. Sella was on it. Engel was on it. Maybe Mark Mayfield. I don't remember. I mean, but anyway, I was doing the live events portion of it. So like every other weekend we were flying somewhere else. So for being a late 20s guy, I mean, we're going to Denver, we're going to Dallas, we're going to Houston, San Antonio. Did an event in Atlantic City, Miami. So like going to cool places, work with the commissions and stuff there. So kind of that whole thing, got to understand more about it. And that was with the Versus Network. And then through that met Corey Schaefer, who was then how we got hooked in with Scott Coker, because Corey Schaefer was with Strike Force at the time, like ISKA plus Strike Force. So met Coker, started doing Strike Force, brought Strike Force here. In the meantime, with Strike Force, the first or second Strike Force is when Kenny Nolling was at a Strike Force fight and saw Jesse fight and have a crowd behind him. So that's how Fight Me
started.
So he called us out. We helped him get that thing started, and then we went our differences.
Listen, history has a way.
Right.
I will say that for this conversation, I'm not necessarily interested in
it just
the interpersonals.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in.
But what's crazy is
I didn't know Jesse Finney fought for Jim Jenkins.
Right.
I didn't know that.
So, and the funny thing is, I tell everybody, like, we did that. Then we put fights on the odds. So we did Bartender's Brawl, like, because we were in bartending. Like, we did a Bartender's Brawl. We did it for like 4 or 5 years, like a bunch of them. And that's how we ended up at Lucky's on the Landing. And we did every Tuesday night we had a Bartender's Brawl.
How long into this to where? Because I'm trying to understand. Like, you said you did 2 shows the first year, for instance. Obviously, the profitability was there. The enthusiasm was there. The labor, the fighters were there. When was it that it became what I know today?
What I'm talking about is, like, the fighters were there because we had a platform for Jesse's Gym for fighters. Same thing
to
now.
train
to
and then
train
to compete.
compete. So now you got all the other gyms who then can train and compete, and it's a place to pull people from. You've got fighters. So now everybody wants to fight. So then you've got, Ray Norris has fighters, I mean, all the gyms like Rogers, Benny Voiles still trains guys out there.
Dude,
so.
the gyms have died down over the. You want to know if I might ask, why do you think you guys have stood the test of time and so many other promotions seem to have fallen? I mean, Fight Hard doesn't exist anymore. Nemesis had to close down shop and then they sold to Brad Carey. Jim Jenkins, I know fighters that have no idea who he is now, yet he was such a staple for St. Louis MMA for the longest time. I still put him on my Mount Rushmore, Jim Jenkins.
Yeah.
So, like, how have you guys been able to just change with the times, stay malleable, but stay consistent? I mean, you're still here 25 years later.
I think because it's a business. I don't think a lot of people start out thinking it is a business, actual company. And that's nothing against anybody. I think even after COVID, it seemed like more promotions popped up everywhere. Like every state has more promotions. So, but it's more like,
what do you think they open up as? Like, if you're opening up as a business, how do you think they view it? Like a singular event?
more of like, let's just make some money, and not thinking long term. You know, which it's changed though since then too. I think putting out a consistent event. Being conscious of not getting into drama as much as we can.
I say this all the time. You and Jesse Finney are the best at it. Whenever there's something going on,
I mean, there's been so much stuff I've said on social media over the years, since social media started. But it's at the end of the day, man. It's like, there's not. What are we gonna do? Comment back?
We were having a conversation when the cameras were off, where I said, "quote unquote," be like Jesse Finney. I've never seen Jesse or you comment on anything in social media. And I don't know if that's like a discipline or because you guys just don't care, a combination of both. I think that's a fucking skill set. I think it serves you guys very well because it gives you I don't want to say the illusion, because illusion means like it's a fictitious thing, but it presents itself as you're above it. And in my opinion, for someone who's been doing it for 25 years, you guys should be.
Well, at the same time, it's like, that's the first and quickest way to burn a bridge.
Yeah.
Is, because here's the thing. MMA as a whole is a small community, even smaller community when you get into St. Louis and Kansas City. And those are our two main markets.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I hate to say it, man, you never know when you're going to need fighters.
Yeah.
And
you want to be everybody's friend.
Right. I mean, you have to understand that, like, it's a business, and piss off one full gym and
you lose how many fighters?
Yeah, lose how many fighters, and at the end of the day, like, it's got to be a win-win for everybody. Like, fighters need a platform to go to. We need the gyms to supply fighters. So it's like, it's a win-win for everybody. And most of the time, some people we patch things up with, some don't. At the end of the day, it's like, I hate to say it. I mean, people say whatever they want about me. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm living my life. I got my kid. I don't care. You can say whatever you want.
That's wisdom.
Not only that, it's like, maybe because we're old and we don't do social media.
I'm not even on the shit to read it.
I mean, I think I'm on Messenger just for messages, but like, I think I've tried a little bit to do like some Instagram. I just don't take many pictures unless they're my kids. So like, I'll put little things out here and there, like, and I think people do a great job. I think truthfully, Shamrock probably missed the boat on Instagram, and we probably could have been blown up even bigger, and we could have been doing a lot more and had more followers and had more content. And we put out a lot of good content, but it's like, you look at everybody's on social media now. Like,
yeah, but I mean, it's never too late. You guys could.
I'm not saying it's too late, but guess what? It could have been blown up a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably if I were to give you. So before I criticize, let me give you the compliments that I would. I had my entire professional career exclusively with you guys, and that's because I enjoy doing business with you guys. Wins, losses, I never took for granted the promotion, the opportunities, and I like to think that I was easy to work with, and so were you guys. We've had, I mean, here you're on this podcast today, right? It's because it's a testament to the relationship we've had. Am I your best friend? No, but have we always been respectful to one another? Yes. One of the things I'll say about Shamrock that I've genuinely appreciated was the consistency in the promotion. Like, for better and worse, you guys were always the status quo. Like, you knew what you were going to get with the Shamrock FC event. You've done some things that have surprised me. That show that you guys did at the Ozarks was phenomenal. I hope you guys do something like that again. Mm-hmm. One of the things that, because I want to see you guys succeed. Just like I want to see the gyms succeed, if the gyms can grow and get more guys, the cream will rise to the top, and you might get more guys to the UFC and what have you. Well, same thing with the promotions. It's like the more you guys can grow, the more money you guys can make, the bigger the platform gets, the more notoriety for the fighters. Right. It's like a symbiotic relationship like we were talking about earlier. Do you feel like there's a part of you guys that is comfortable and that you guys enjoy the status quo of what you've created?
No.
Why do you think I said that then?
You've been out of the game. You're getting old. You're retired, bud. You're retired. You got that nice suit on. You're retired. You sit back.
I know, man. I
watches,
wake up and so
watches. You know, we're always working, man.
No, I know that. I've never said you've gotten lazy.
And we're working on a lot of things now. So I mean,
Ozarks again, maybe.
We're working.
Yeah,
we're working on some stuff, and I think it's going to be very good. From Midwest and St. Louis, Kansas City.
What would be like something like a dream event? Like, not necessarily something you're working on now, but like if you were to think to yourself, like, before we hang up the gloves, and I also want to talk about what that would look like, right? Yeah. Because right now it's been 25 years of you and Jesse Finney. Is there a Shamrock FC without either of you? Is there a Shamrock FC with only one of you? Is there a Shamrock FC after you?
So what was the question before that?
The first question is, what's the dream event? If there was something that you could do.
Oh man,
is there like a venue?
We've done some cool stuff. I mean, we just got Trade Center a couple different times.
Under the arch, once, on the lawn.
Here's the thing though. I'm very leery about outdoor events. You can ask Jesse when
it rains, you're fucked.
Like, man, we were watching that August, Lake of the Ozarks, August outside. I was like
sweating.
I mean, I was just like, we paid extra to make sure we had canopy over the thing, like
just in case.
Well, just for burning people's feet.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
We did an event at the tennis courts in Forest Park one time.
How was that?
It was stressful because it was supposed to rain. It wasn't supposed to rain. Like, outdoor events are just tough, man.
Yeah.
A dream event, I just don't know. I mean, I guess we haven't done one in Busch Stadium.
That'd be cool.
I don't know. I mean,
but then that's an outdoor event.
I know, that's what I'm saying. but that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't know where else I'd go.
Soccer field?
Soccer field would be cool. But I just don't know if there's like a dream event.
And then the second part to that question would be, what's the future of Shamrock now? Because like you said, 25 years, you and Jesse, from the beginning until today. And by the way, I'm not saying that you guys are like hanging up the gloves. I'm saying one day,
like 1 foot in the grave. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying more like, what does this look like in 10 years? Are you still there in 10 years? Is Jesse still there in 10 years?
10 years.
Both of you guys?
Yeah. 100%,
no shit.
100%.
Good for you guys.
I got to pay for college. My kids are 3.
we got expenses.
I got a good 18 years of college coming up.
Would you guys ever consider selling?
Never know.
If the price was right.
I mean, everything's for sale, right? I mean,
$20 is $20,
Rob. But no, I mean, yeah. I could, 10 years, 100%. 15, probably 90%. Yeah. I mean, maybe 100%. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, honestly, we've never talked about it.
And this is also like, all variables are constant. Yeah. Health is there, all these other things. Obviously there's curveballs like we throw. I'm saying, but if everything else is good, you guys are still doing this 10 or 15 years from now. Do you guys ever see yourself bringing on partners? Because like right now, I feel like it's just like you and Jesse.
I don't know if
is there a need for it? Is there a need?
I don't think there's. I mean, we're always growing.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some social media people that we're doing stuff with now. We've got some new graphic designers.
But those are more employees. I'm talking about partners.
No.
No, just you two.
I don't know if Dana wants to call. I mean, get Dana money.
Would you guys get consider UFC Fight Pass and all that stuff? How does that even work?
I don't know. Literally, I have no clue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I'm guessing there's. I don't even watch it. I hate to say that. Like, I don't watch the Contender that much unless I know somebody or someone's fought for us before. Especially now, just because the time that I'm not at fights, I'm spending with my family.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm
the same.
Yeah,
way,
I don't watch. I don't know how the Fight Pass stuff works. So for me, I don't even know what it entails. So, we do have some great distribution stuff with our stuff. I mean, I think we're now with Bally Sports, and so the fights are on there. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's amazing though, because it's so funny. I'll get text probably once a week from somebody somewhere that's got a screenshot from some
TV somewhere.
Some TV somewhere that's like, oh my God, look, you guys are on here, and it's like I didn't even know we're on. I didn't know we're in Boston.
It's gotta feel good though.
It's cool, It's like branching out, getting that brand out there a little bit more.
It's your baby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll be around. We're not going anywhere.
I know. I guess my question was more on the lines of like the inner workings, because like I'm fascinated by the business. I'm fascinated by the model, the avenue in which you guys operate, the way you guys have to, the dichotomy of like the labor source being the fighters and then the relationships. I think it is an extremely difficult road to navigate, and I don't think there's been ever a promotion that has made everybody happy. But I will say that you guys have been so consistent that there seems to be some proof in the pudding, so to speak. And Rob, I just got to say, from one person who competed and now is retired, I can't thank you guys enough for the promotion, the platform, the opportunity. I look back at my time working with you guys fondly. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've ever had a bad conversation.
No.
So just from me to you, I appreciate you, and it's been a good time.
Even though you did fight as an amateur for us.
I didn't even know you guys existed.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? Because
where'd you train at?
Well, I trained at CMAA in the basement of a pizzeria
under
with Jay Diamato.
Jay Diamato.
And Jay had a really good relationship with Jim Jenkins. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, like, I trained like 3 weeks because I came from high school wrestling until my first fight. They kind of thrust me because they're like, oh, dude, you could do this. You know what I mean? So, like, I had my first fight 3 weeks into training. I didn't even know to be honest with you, I didn't even know the rule. I didn't know the rounds were 3 minutes. That's how little I knew about MMA. And then after my first fight, I watched WEC. I didn't even know the UFC existed. I didn't know what UFC was. Yeah. That's my history. So, like, I did.
But UFC was only on pay-per-view, so if you weren't...
They were on Spike at the time. But you want to know what's funny about Spike? Spike was like Channel 71.
Right, yeah.
And I never went to Channel 71. Yeah. 69 was the highest because that was Comedy Central. So, but I saw Versus because it was on like Channel 42. So I was like, oh, dude, what is the WEC? Yeah. Oh, this is the stuff I do. This is so cool. When I think back about how innocent and ignorant I was at the beginning 2 years of my like fight career, there is a part of me that wishes it would have been like that a little longer, because the sport was more beautiful. And then as I started winning, people started acknowledging me more. The game changed, and then I started letting. I don't want to say fame, because fame's a bad word to describe it, but
ego.
I let the ego go unchecked, and I often say this, that I never felt like fighting was a waste of time. I'm very glad I did it. It was a skill set for my mental, for my critical thinking abilities, and more importantly, for me as a human being, as a man. This is going to sound kind of weird. I think every man should get punched in the face every now and then. I think it's good for us. Rob Donaker, I appreciate you, brother.
No problem. Thanks.
I hope it was fun.
Yeah.